So a question that I often get asked by home buyers that are sometimes a little nervous or shaky about buying a home is if for some reason I decide to back out of the contract, what can happen? Will I be sued? Will I lose money? These are some very common and legit questions that many buyers want to know before they decide to buy a home. And of course, for any buyer, your intention or goal should not be to walk away from a contract, but sometimes things can happen where you may not have a choice. Or you may feel the home you're planning to buy isn't the right home for you after all. So today we're going to talk about, is it okay to back out of a contract? How do you do it? And what are the ramifications? My name is Cherilyn Williams, your local Chicagoland realtor. And every week I provide real estate education for home buyers to help you navigate the home buying process. And if you enjoy this video, please smash that like button, comment, share, and subscribe to my channel. And if you are looking for a realtor in the Chicagoland area, my information is in the description below. So when you finally decide to make a decision to buy a home, most sellers are going to require a good faith deposit. Now, this deposit is an upfront payment that you will pay once you and the seller sign a contract that becomes legal and binding. Now, this deposit is called earnest money. That home seller wants to know that you are serious in buying their home because they're going to take their home off the market specifically for you. So you need to be serious and not waste the seller's time. Now, once the seller takes their home off the market, they will not be showing their home to any other buyers. And like I said, if you're not serious and you're just playing around with the seller's time and wasting their time, that seller could be missing out on other offers and other interested buyers. And every day that home is off the market, that seller is losing precious time and money. So now you can see why this earnest money deposit is so important in a real estate transaction. Now, with earnest money, you can put down however much you want, but not to add insult to the sellers. Usually buyers want to put down a pretty good amount to show their seriousness. Now, I usually recommend to my buyers to put down 1 to 3% of the purchase price. And the higher the amount, the better you will look in the eyes of a seller in a very competitive market. Now, once both parties have signed the contract, you have a couple of days to submit the earnest money. So it's not like you have to have the earnest money right when the contract is signed. And this is great because it gives you a little time to get the earnest money together. And usually it's like a couple of days or 3 days on average to turn in the earnest money. Now, the earnest money can be paid by check or electronically to the seller's agent's brokerage, a title company, or an attorney. And you don't have to worry if your money gets lost or misplaced because that earnest money will be deposited into a special escrow account until you close. And what's great and sometimes shocking to home buyers is that you can receive all of your earnest money back and it will be credited to you at closing as long as you follow through with the contract with no major hiccups or backing out. Now, I had to give you a little background information on earnest money so we can now get into the nit and gritty of what happens if you back out of a real estate contract. Now, backing out of a contract depends on if you are the buyer or the seller. And not every real estate contract is the same from state to state or the type of language that is used. And so that's why it's very important that you consult with a very good realtor and a good real estate attorney to help you with the ins and outs of a contract. Now, for the purpose of this video, I'm going to be talking about how contracts affects mainly a buyer, because for a seller, the contract doesn't have many stipulations. Because if you think about it, a seller doesn't have many reasons to back out of a contract when they are the ones that listed their home for sale in the first place. So if a seller backs out of a contract for no good reason, both parties can walk away amicably, or a buyer may file a lawsuit if they feel like they have been negatively affected by the seller backing out. So generally, real estate contract protects a home buyer. So when you buy a home, there are 3 main contingencies or certain obligations in a contract that must be met within a specific time frame. And in real estate, you have 3 major ones. And there are a couple of other ones, but these are the main 3. You will have a home inspection, an appraisal, and a financing contingency. And they all have certain deadlines that you must meet. Now, with the inspection contingency, a home inspector will assess the general condition of the home, and you only have a certain number of days to complete the home inspection. And that's in business days. It doesn't include the weekends. Here in my state of Illinois, we only have 5 days to perform the inspection after the contract is signed. In some other states, it may be longer, like 10 days, but your fabulous realtor will help you meet your contingencies on time. So be sure to be in communication with your realtor always. Now, if for some reason the inspection goes terrible and there's tons of things wrong with the home, you can back out of your contract with the seller and get all of your earnest money back, as long as you let the seller know within the inspection contingency time frame. If you wait after that time frame, let's say on the 6th or 7th day, when your contingency was for 5 days, and you decide you no longer want to buy the home, you could lose all of your earnest money and it can be given to the seller. Now, with the appraisal contingency, an appraiser will come to the home to assess the value and compare it to other homes similar to yours in your neighborhood to arrive at the price for your home. If the appraised value comes in lower than what your offer price is for the home, you have a couple of options here. You can ask the seller to lower the price to what the appraised value should be, which in many cases a seller is willing to do. Or you can make up the difference by paying money out of your own funds to cover the gap, known as an appraisal gap. And lastly, if you have a seller that may be, a little bit more greedy and will not budge on lowering the price to what the market says it should be, you could just say, the heck with it, I'm walking away. Now, in this case, if the seller refuses to lower the price and you decide to withdraw the contract, you can back out of the contract and you can get all of your earnest money back without fail. But let's say the appraisal contingency time period has already passed and you've had a few days to think about it, and you say to yourself, you know what? I really don't want this home anymore. Well, if it's past that contingency time frame, you would lose your earnest money and the seller would get it. Okay, so the final contingency is the financing or loan approval contingency. This can be a very daunting and stressful time for a home buyer because the process can be so tedious, and because the lender is scrutinizing everything about your life, it seems. But your lender has a certain number of days to go through the underwriting process for your loan approval. And just because you got a pre-approval for a home loan doesn't mean you will get approved for the loan in the end. And I know there's a lot of buyers that are surprised that their loan didn't go through during the underwriting when they were already pre-approved initially, but it honestly can happen. And if the lender finds something in your file, like inconsistent employment, or you go out and you buy a new car and get a loan, that throws your entire debt to income ratio off and you could lose out and not be approved. Now, if you for some reason can't get approved due to you not being able to get qualified in that contingency period, where it's really no fault of yours, you will get all of your earnest money returned to you. But let's say you wait after the contingency period and you're just days away from closing and you decide, you know what, I really don't think I want this home anymore, and you decide to withdraw the contract. You can lose all of your earnest money and it will be given to the seller. And I actually had this happen to a seller of mine when we were literally just 2 days away from closing. Our contingency time frame was met and the buyer decided to back out. And because of that buyer waiting until after the contingency period with 2 days before the closing, that buyer lost all of their earnest money and it was returned to my seller. And my seller was not happy because the home had been off the market for a couple of weeks, I think to almost a month, but he did get the earnest money for his troubles. So essentially, if you back out of a contract for no good reason or past the contingency deadline, the other party, whether buyer or seller, can take legal action against you and may be able to get the earnest money deposit. Now, I have heard of some crazy instances where sellers had packed up their home and got the moving trucks ready with the movers and were moving to a different state. And then they found out the buyer decided not to go with the contract and they canceled the contract. These sellers were already buying another house. And naturally, the sellers were angry and they wanted to take legal action against the buyer. But I guess they figured it wasn't worth the time and it wasn't worth the money, and instead just took the buyer's earnest money deposit. So buying a home can be some real serious business, and you sure can back out of a contract, but be aware of the ramifications of doing so. That's why you want to be sure that you are ready and that you don't make sudden or rash decisions before thinking it through completely. And I would also say to work with an experienced realtor and an attorney. And I know there's some of you out there that think, I don't need a realtor, or feel that realtors are unnecessary. But our jobs as realtors is to help you with meeting your deadlines in a contract to protect your interests. So if you have any questions or comments, drop me a comment below, and happy home shopping. Thank you for watching.